Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Xobin Talks, where we explore the evolving world of talent, workforce strategy, leadership, and the future of work. I'm your host, Nikita, and today we are joined by one of Asia's most respected HR thought leaders, a global HR strategist, professor, author, board advisor, and influential voice in the world of HR, Dr. Fermin Diez, who currently serves as a governing council member and co-chair of accreditation and professional development committee at the Singapore Institute of Directors, with leadership experience spanning more than 40 countries across consulting, corporate, academic, and advisory roles. Hello, Dr. Furman, and welcome to Zabin Talks.
Hi, Nikita. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
You
The
have
pleasure is all mine.
You have so many remarkable achievements and experiences to your name that we genuinely try to keep the introduction short, but it was nearly impossible.
You're very
We
kind.
are
Thank
excited. We are excited to learn more from your experiences and insights, especially at a time where organizations everywhere are rethinking how they hire, develop, reward, and retain talents.
you.
Let's dive in.
Sure.
You have had an incredible journey across consulting, academia, corporate leadership, and board advisory roles in more than 40 countries. How did your journey into HR and workforce strategy begin? And what made you stay deeply invested in this field over the years?
I studied psychology as an undergrad, and the first job that I was able to find was an HR job. So I didn't really design my career this way, at least not at first. I happened to stumble into a good company that had an HR opening. This was back in the early 80s. And so I took it, and I figured any job at that point was good enough. And I started doing HR. So that led to different experiences. But one of my experiences that I most remember was talking to a head of department. He was the head of our procurement department at the place where I was working, who I had gone to talk to him about the engagement survey results for his area. And during the meeting, he seemed very aloof, and I left the meeting feeling quite upset. I happened to meet him at a later point in time, and he basically taught me something that I would never forget. He told me that uh, he basically said this. He said, you were talking to me about satisfaction and communication and engagement, when my boss only talks to me about dollars and cents. So until you can tell me how does satisfaction and engagement translates into dollars and cents, I'm not going to be listening. And I took that to heart. I didn't take it as a dismissal. I rather took it as a challenge. Basically, a year later, I had decided that I needed to learn about business language. And so I went to study a master's at Wharton, and I did it as an MBA, not a master's in HR, because I needed to learn as much business as possible. I took every hard course that I could get. I took 3 accounting courses, 2 financial courses, 2 economic courses. I took everything that I could imagine that would teach me how to be numerical as opposed to psychological. And it's something that has marked my career ever since. That I find that where we need to be is in that space where people and business results collide, or where they meet. And that's where the space for HR. We can't be too far in either direction. We must be pretty much in the middle of it. And so that's what I have been trying to do since the very beginning.
That's a wonderful journey, Dr. Furman. What stands out from your journey is how closely people strategy and business strategy have become interconnected over time.
Correct.
And and that naturally brings me to my next question. You have worked closely with multinational organizations, governments, and boards across very different markets and cultures.
Mhm.
Looking back at your experience, how has the role of HR evolved from a supportive functions to a true business and strategic leadership function?
When I first started, we were called the personnel department. And most of the job was around two big things: the administration of people and the management of what I'm going to term now employee happiness. So controlling turnover and controlling engagement were the two key aspects. We had another big role in my first job, which was managing the union. From there, I would say that the role has progressed a lot. I don't think that today many people feel that our only roles need to be people administration or just managing turnover and engagement. I think a lot of people understand that we are here to help the implementation of business strategy through people.
Absolutely.
And that is to me the key of what we do. So we've gone from personnel to HR to human capital to people and culture. Um, and progressively, I think with each iteration that we call ourselves, what we are trying to get is closer to this real purpose, I think, of HR, which is, I think, how do we add value to our business while at the same time ensuring that our people are treated fairly. Now, where is that taking us? I think we're not done. We're in the next iteration that I see, given where the world is today. I would call it that instead of being called the chief human resource officers, we will be called the chief resource officers. And let me explain that. Instead of being the chief people officers, we will be the chief productivity officers. And the reason for that is that as we now enter this new world where technology is able to do not only manufacturing and blue collar work, but it's also able to do white collar work, it will be up to the HR department or the resources department, as I now call it, to figure out how much of the work will be done by people, but how much of the work will be done by machines, and how much of the work will be done by agents, and how much of the work will be done by part timers. So, this new equation that we need to worry about how work will be done and whether it's going to be robots or chatbots or full time or part time or contractors, that's going to be the new, I think, horizon. So in my mind, that next iteration will be either chief productivity officers or chief resource officers, because it'll be all resources, not just the human ones.
That's a fascinating perspective because today's HR leaders are, expected to create measurable business value, not just manage people processes. And one area where that expectations is becoming increasingly visible is in how organizations think about performance and rewards. So, building on that thought, let's move on to our next question.
Mhm. Let's go.
In your recent work, you have spoken about how traditional rewards and compensation models are becoming outdated. What do you think organizations today need to rethink about their relationship between skills, performance, rewards, and business outcomes?
It's a very broad question, Nikita. Let me see if I can unpack it little by little. Um, the first part, I think, that is becoming increasingly obvious as we navigate or as we go through this new revolution that we're going through is that we no longer need to hire people for what degree they have, but for what knowledge they have. Um, you take me as an example. I have a degree in psychology, but I now have skills that go beyond what I learned in school. I have a master's in business, but I also have skills that go beyond the skills I learned in school. I'm sure as you progress in your career, you will also find that the things that will make you useful, and I mean that in the best possible way, to whatever organization you decide to lend your talents to, will be things that you didn't necessarily learn in university. So the idea that we're going to continue to pay people based on degrees or based on level of education will become less prevalent, and we're going to start paying people more for the things they know how to do. We already do that. We just don't think that we're doing it, but we do, because by now workforces are anywhere between 5% to maybe 40, more than 40% composed of part-timers. And the part-timers, we tend to hire for their skills. We don't really bother to know what education they have. We just want to know what skill they have. Can they program this? Can they impact that? Can they take care of this other thing? So we're already doing that. And I think it's just going to be a matter of how do we do that. Now, that part has a problem. And the problem in compensation is that we have been so used to going to get salary surveys to tell us how much somebody is worth that we are finding it difficult to imagine how we're going to do this without a salary survey. So I think a lot of the constraints around skills and paying for skills have been, how do I know how much a skill is worth? Hold that thought, because that's not the only problem. The second problem, I think, has been that we've learned over the years in the area of rewards that we pay the job and not the person. But the moment we pay for skills, we have to flip that paradigm, and we have to accept the fact that we are now going to pay the person and not the job. But our systems are not made to do that. And we're afraid that we're going to create inequity. So instead, we haven't changed. And let me take that thought even a little bit further. In the last 20 years, let's just call it since the turn of the century, the area of talent acquisition has changed significantly. We now have AI doing the recruiting. We have assessments. We have all kinds of new technology. We have certainly talent acquisition systems to help do the work. A lot of change. In the area of talent development, we've also seen learning management systems come, and now we have on-the-go training and bite-sized training and the ROI of training. And we've also seen competency models and lots of change in the area. Analytics is another area that has changed tremendously. We have
Right.
dedicated analytics tools, a lot of analytics going on in many organizations. But can you think, and can the audience, anybody listening to this, think very hard? Since the turn of the century, can you think of any change in the area of rewards? And I'm going to let that silence just run for a second here, because everyone listening is probably drawing a blank. There has been no radical change in rewards. How can that be? The rest of human resources has evolved, not just with technology, but with the reality that the future of work is making us change. The area of rewards is still bound by things. I'll tell you the truth, I've been doing this for more than 40 years. The stuff that I learned when I first started doing compensation in the 1980s is the same stuff I teach at the university today. The stuff that we're still using, hate points, for instance, were invented in the 1940s. We've been doing this for 80 years. We need to change the area of rewards, and rewards is just not keeping up with the rest of human resources. I think we need to make radical changes in what we're doing. But let me stop there and continue with our conversation.
Right. So that's an important point because many organizations still operates using systems that were designed decades ago, and which leads perfectly to our next question. Many companies still rely heavily on annual increments, ratings, and standardized reward systems. Do you believe these traditional performance models are losing relevance with today's workforce expectations?
No, the answer is okay. I'm going to sound like a traditional HR person and saying it depends, but let me at least explain what does it depend on. Many organizations, the ones that have not begun this process of change, believe that these methods work. And one of the most deep-seated beliefs in the area of rewards is that you need bonuses to cause performance. Again, I'm going to ask a question of everyone listening. How often do you wake up in the morning thinking, what will I do today to ensure that my bonus at the end of the year is going to be as big as possible? How often are you seated in front of your laptop, about to answer an email, thinking, how am I going to answer this email in a way that will maximize my incentive? If you're a salesperson, every email that you write to every client, you have that in your mind. If you're a salesperson, likely every morning you wake up, you think this. If you're a senior executive, I also guarantee that most mornings you're waking up thinking, how am I going to impact value? But roughly 80% of the people in a company that are not in sales or senior executives don't wake up in the morning thinking this. So how is it that we think money motivates when people are not thinking about the money? I have always found this to be a very interesting dilemma. Most people will actually not change the way they work. Now, of course, I say this and people are going to say, oh, no, no, that's not my experience. I find two things. And my experience has been the following. I spent 10 years working in the area of social services. And one of the things that I learned by working in social services is that practically nobody in social services works for money. They need to have enough money. The money needs to be fair, but they don't show up to work to make more money. They will work for the patient. They will work for the client. They will not necessarily work for the money. They work for the cause. I've spent a lot of my time also in academia, as you mentioned earlier. Most professors don't teach because they're going to get paid more. Most professors teach out of the love of teaching. Many people show up to work because they want to do a good job. If you take the bonus away, they don't stop wanting to do a good job. It can create another problem, which is the freeloader problem. That is true. But the logic that we're going to create an entire system to offset a small minority of freeloaders is not a good logic. So I think we deal with freeloaders through management means, identify them and manage them out, but not necessarily set up an entire system that does that. It is the experience that I've had, and I'm sure many of the people listening to your podcast will have a similar experience, which is what is the one thing that we do in human resources that it is almost certain to make people upset? And the answer to that is performance management. That is what makes people upset every year. And the corollary to that question, Nikita, is what will you do about it next year? And the answer to that will be nothing. I will continue to do the same thing next year as I did this year, even though I know that it made people upset. This is a problem. If we take it one step further, which is merit increases, the typical difference between let's say, an on-target performer and above target performer will be in the neighborhood of 2 to 3%. How much extra work do you believe anybody is willing to do for an extra 2 to 3% of pay? Not a lot. So I think we've addressed this with the wrong blunt instrument. We've addressed performance as if we're going to increase performance by dangling carrots and waving sticks. What I think really happens, and this is what theories of motivation have taught me, is that when pay is not fair, it produces malcontent. This is why every year, a performance management period, you see so many people upset, but very few people happy because you've created unfairness in the system. So, what we need to figure out is how do we build fairness into the system? And there are several ideas to do that. I'll just name a couple that I'm particularly fascinated with. One is the notion that you truly pay for skills, but don't go into the how much is a skill worth. That's too hard to do. We don't have the data. This is true. So, how do we do it instead? People that are above the level of skill for the job they're doing should be paid above the midpoint. People who are still growing or just not able to meet the level of skill required for the job should be paid below the midpoint. And people that have the level of skill required should be paid around the midpoint. This isn't that hard to do. Another idea that I really like is the idea of personalizing pay. This is a notion that some companies have already implemented, whereby what we do is we ask an employee, hi, Nikita, you can join my company. You are going to make, let's say, $600,000, but you can choose how do you want your pay allocated? And you can actually choose all $600,000 of base pay, no bonus. Or you can say, I want $300,000 only of base pay and the rest in a bonus, because then you could have upside. You could have downside, but you can have upside. So if you're the type of person that says, I am motivated by money, then take an offer that has an upside and a downside and bet on yourself. But if you are the person that says, I don't really work for this idea of bigger bonuses, I work because I love doing what I'm doing, then don't take the bonus, take the base pay. What's to me fascinating is because we are here to attract, retain, and motivate. If you do that kind of thing, you'll be able to attract much better candidates because now pay is not the way that they're differentiating themselves. They can choose how they want to be paid. There'll be a higher retention because they are now being paid according to the way they want. And the motivation for those that are motivated by money will still be there. And for those that were never motivated by money, it will also be there. So to me, it's a more interesting way to pay people than the traditional methods. And of course, I can already hear the audience saying, oh, but that's so hard to manage. That's why we have computer systems. That's why we have, how hard would it be that in your payroll, you're just going to say, this employee 600 base, zero bonus, this employee 300 base, 300 bonus. It's not that difficult to do.
Yeah, I think if traditional performance frameworks are evolving, then naturally the way organizations evaluate talent is changing as well. And we are already seeing this through the rise of skills first talent strategies. With that in mind, let's move on to the next question.
Mhm.
Organizations are increasingly moving towards skills first hiring, workforce analytics, and data driven talent decisions.
Mhm.
How do you see skills becoming a more important currency than job titles or years of experience in the future of work?
As I was saying earlier, I think it's becoming increasingly uh, normal to bring in part timers because of what they know how to do. And you focus a lot less on years of experience, which whether it was a tier one school that they graduated from or whether they have a degree in the right engineering area, it becomes less important. What becomes a lot more important is can they do what I asked them to do? So I'll give you a for instance. If we want to develop a new AI tool in the company that can do whatever, manage our offers to employees from the moment your talent acquisition system is done selecting the candidate, then you need to create an offer. You want to create an AI tool that can do that. Great. Will it matter to you that the person worked in a consulting firm, has a degree from the best business school, top 20 in the world? Or does it matter to you that they have done it 10 times before in 10 other companies? What you're going to say is, I don't really care where they study. I don't even care if their degree is in communications or English literature or whatever you choose. What matters is they know how to do this thing that I want them to do. I think this is where we're headed. Where we're headed is it's going to be far less important um, to decide if you had the right career path. And what's going to be a lot more important is did you have the right experience along the way? That it's inevitable. We're already doing it for the part-timers. So it's the reality is that one of the things that I think is failing us in compensation is that we are still thinking that full-time employees are the only people that we need to manage and everybody else we don't. But as the amount of part-timers grows in the company as a percentage of the total workforce population, the notion of pay equity has to extend to this population that, if it's 5% or maybe 10% or less than the total population, maybe it hasn't become a problem yet. But by the time it becomes more than 10% and it becoming 20, 30, 40%, the pay equity between the full-timers and the part-timers becomes important because now they're all going to be sitting around the same table at lunch, and the part-timers and the full-timers are going to be trading notes. As we know, pay is not confidential. It has never really been. So how are we going to manage that? And I think this is where it's going to happen, that all of a sudden a full-timer is going to realize that, oh, you mean to tell me that if you know how to do this one thing, you can get paid more than I get paid? Then I'm going to go learn and do that thing and demand the same level of pay. Or you're getting paid that much to do that. I'm doing that in-house and I get paid less than you. No, I don't think that's fair. And that is what's going to start to happen.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to look at it. It certainly seems that skills are becoming one of the most valuable assets in today's workforce. As organizations shift towards skills-based decisions, technology and data become critical enablers. However, technology alone doesn't guarantee better outcomes. So let's move on to another area that is transforming HR and talent management. So, you have also highlighted the growing impact of AI, analytics, and technology in workforce planning and reward strategy. What do you think organizations are using HR technology effectively today, and where they are getting it wrong?
Okay. Again, a broad question. Let me try to unpack it. The where they're getting it right. I think we're getting a lot of things right these days. I think um, talent acquisition systems, Xobin being a prime example of it, are definitely making a big dent in how we recruit and in how we minimize the risk of hiring the wrong person. And I have always told people that what we do is not really hire the right person, is we minimize hiring of the wrong person. So just by doing that, we've made great progress. I think we've also made great progress in what we're doing in terms of career development, um, mapping career development. I also see great development in technology, but maybe not great use of it just yet in the area of workforce planning and in general people analytics. I find that too many organizations are still doing analytics as reports, as dashboards. They're looking backwards at what has happened as opposed to trying to project forwards what is likely to happen and how do we work on that. So I think that one, we are only getting it half right. We are definitely having better data. The data seems to be more accessible. But even then, I would say that we have stopped in too many cases with the AHR data. And back to where we started this conversation, in order for us to really figure out what our policies and programs, the impact that they have on adding value to the business, we need to also have business data or access to business data so that we can compare simple things like did this training contribute to lower cost, or did this training contribute to higher quality, or did this pay system contribute to better sales performance? So in the end, we are not just doing this to increase engagement, we are doing this to help the business. So we need to manage both the HR data and the business data. So that one, I think we're getting it half right. The one that I said earlier, I don't think we're getting it very right yet, is the area of rewards. I find that many organizations are either still using Excel to manage their compensation, or they're using very traditional, not compensation specific software to do it. Some of the add-ons to the more popular HRIS systems are good for managing, but perhaps not good enough for predicting and forecasting. I think there are systems available to do that, but not enough is being done to actually do it. So I think that one is where I put it as the lowest grade. So if I were to grade it, I would give A so far to the recruiting ones, the talent acquisition ones, B's to the performance, to the talent development, perhaps C's to the use of analytics, but D's to the compensation ones.
Absolutely. Technology is changing how work gets done, but work itself is changing too. Remote works, gig talent, portfolio careers, and evolving employee expectations are reshaping the workplace in a way that we couldn't have imagined a few years ago, actually.
Mhm.
So that's bring us to our next question. With remote works, gig talent, flexible career, and changing employees' expectations, reshaping workplaces globally. What do you believe organizations must fundamentally rethink to build future ready talent and reward strategies?
Two things. The future ready talent will be a combination of core employees that can do the core work, part-time employees that can supplement how this works or come in to do specific projects. Then technology, either in the form of robots or of chatbots, to do the more routine work or the more detailed oriented work, meaning in manufacturing, for instance, some of the work that the robots can do can be more precise. So from a human resource perspective, it'll be up to us to figure out how best to structure this. Now, there's a few other things that we'll need to keep in mind. We have also thought traditionally that people need to show up to work. Now, people showing up to work creates a geographic restriction. You know, if everybody needs to be at the office in Mumbai, then you can only hire talent from Mumbai. If you change that restriction to say, I will hire the talent wherever I need it, and the problem then becomes, how do I still create integrated teams, and how do I still manage across borders, and how do I manage remote workforces? This will be a new challenge for middle management in particular. I think that's a challenge that we haven't quite cracked yet in HR, that COVID told us that it is possible, but we didn't quite prepare our middle management yet to manage this way. So I think that will be one of those future ready frontiers that should happen sooner rather than later, but they haven't happened yet. The other one, I think, is this notion that when we start to realize that skill acquisition will matter a great deal, two things will also become quite apparent. We'll start hiring more for skills, but we will start paying more for skills. Now, this is an interesting thing that HR continues to do. When we hire, we will write up a whole list of these are the things that we're looking for in our candidate. And we put it into our whole recruiting process. And we want them to be I don't know, AI enabled, and we want them to be good negotiators, and we want them to be team players, and we will list out the skills that we specifically require for this job. And we will decide how much we're going to pay this person based on how much of those skills and to what level the person possesses. So if I'm interviewing Nikita and Nikita is amazing at all of the things that I want for the particular job that I'm recruiting her for, I'm going to say, okay, and my range is, let's say, 100 to 150, but she's amazing at it, so I can offer her on the top end. So let's offer her 125, 130. So you may not think of it this way, but we're actually paying for skills. We've determined through our interview process that this candidate possesses more of the skills than I need, and therefore I'm willing to pay on the high end of the salary range. And then we bring that employee on board. And the first thing we're going to do is, oh, but now you're paid above the midpoint. So your salary increase is going to be less than other people. And of course, the candidate is going to say, wait a minute, you hired me high because you thought I was great. I'm still great because I still have more of the competencies than everybody else. But the reward for being great is you're going to pay me less? So we hire for skills, even though we don't think of it that way. But because we don't pay for skills, we create this dichotomy in the mind of the employee, who, by the way, perfectly well knows that if they go out to the market again, the market will value her skills again at the high end. So it makes no sense that they were hired for skills, that they can be rehired elsewhere for skills, but when they're inside the company, oh, no, we pay the job, not the person, and we need to get you down to the midpoint, and therefore we're going to lower your salary increase. Makes no sense to me. So those are the things that I think we need to sort of get used to, that not only paying remotely is going to be, and hiring and paying remotely is going to be more prevalent, is the notion that skills-based management of people will become more prevalent.
Dr. Fermin, this has been an incredibly insightful discussion. Before we wrap up, let's switch gears and move into a quick rapid fire round. I'll ask a few questions and you can answer with the very first thought that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Okay, let's go.
All right. One workplace trend that organizations are still underestimating today.
I don't think we are using data enough.
If you had the chance to remove one outdated HR practice forever, what would it be?
Merit pay increases, please.
Skills first hiring or experience first hiring? Which do you think will dominate the future?
Experience in skills.
One quality that separates exceptional leaders from good managers.
Vision. How far ahead they can see and how they can get people to follow that vision.
What's one piece of advice you would give to the next generation of HR leaders?
Learn numbers.
Dr. Fermin, thank you so much for joining us today. Your insights on the future of HR, the evolution of rewards, and growing importance of skills, and the role of technology in shaping workforce decisions have given us a lot to think about. I particularly appreciate your perspective on aligning talent strategy with real business impact, something every HR leader and professional can learn from. Thank you again for sharing your time and expertise with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
And to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Xobin Talks. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow us for more discussions with industry leaders, innovators, and experts shaping the future of work. Soon we'll get back with another episode. Until next time, I'm Nikita signing off. Take care and stay curious.